Hi, I'm James from Soniccouture, and this is a tutorial for Polarity Modular, our latest release. This is part one. Part one is going to cover the basics of granular synthesis and our Polarity engine. Then part two is going to take that further into a more advanced territory, showing you how you can build kind of analog granular machines using the sample data that comes with Polarity Modular and the four main modulation controls that feature in the Polarity engine. This is quite an exciting way to work. It teaches you to kind of build a template which can create loads of different sound design just from one template, and you can just randomize or drop your own samples into those templates and warp those all over the place. But first, let's have a look at the basics. Polarity has two granular engines represented by the waveform top and bottom here, and inside here, as you see, we click top and bottom, and you can see the two different engines quite distinct in blue and green. Now, what is granular synthesis? Well, I like to think of granular synthesis as a little bit like digital audio or sampling. I mean, as we all know, digital audio functions by chopping audio recordings into thousands and thousands of different slices, 48 or 96,000 slices per second. Now, these are inaudible. It tricks the ear into giving a representation of the audio signal that we hear. But the thing what granular does is kind of much more crude in a way. It does it much more slowly in much more audible chunks. So let me show you what I mean. If we come into our granular engine here, remember we click grains here, and we'll find that on the right hand side this grain section is the place to start to define the size and shapes of your grains that you're going to be working with. And as you'll see, there's various options of how you can do that. By default, in the Polarity Modular template here, which by the way you'll find in Utilities, by default they're set quite large. So that's giving you a kind of realistic representation of the waveform. I've loaded up a DPO morphing wave here. I can audition it by clicking this here. Okay. So as I say, it chops it into slices. So if we take down our attack and decay on the grain, you can hear it doing its slicing thing. It sounds a bit like a gate effect. This controls the rate. You can go really slow. And this is the length of the slice. So 10 milliseconds is the shortest it will do. Now the rate can get really fast, and when it does you get a kind of metallic grungy effect, and that's one of the strings that Modular has to its bow, which is kind of different to analog synthesis perhaps. Now, as I mentioned, attack and decay are essential because they enable you to shape each individual piece, each individual grain. So if I put this back to a slower effect and a slightly longer time, you can hear the grains. Now that's tracking along here. That's the scan control. I'm just going to set that to 0, and this is the position. Just going to move that a bit. So now we hear a completely static grain. It's not scanning. Scan controls how quickly it plays through, as you see. So I'm just going to shape that, rolling off the attack. You can hear it's quite soft, and the decay, then the end of the grain is going to lengthen. So in this way you can get quite soft cloud-like textures from granular. If I bring the rate down so the grains are happening more quickly, you can hear I've now got a kind of unified tone. So that might enable me to make a kind of pad-like sound. So at the moment, our scan is static. I could give that a negative value, and it will play through backwards. So as it does, any timbral variation in our initial waveform, and this is a morphing waveform, you're going to hear that as it scans through. So that's really nice. We've got a natural timbral evolution there just from the waveform. We're not using any filters or envelopes or LFOs or traditional synthesis at this stage, though we can add those later if we want. But another way to add movement to our granular signal is to set scan back again. Now that's now static. And what I love about granular and the scan control is that ability to just zoom in on one part of your waveform and freeze it. So this is completely fixed. If I reduce attack and decay, you hear it a bit more precisely. So we're just in that part there. This is our position controller. I can pick any point in this waveform control. Any point that sounds interesting. Now, what might be interesting is to zoom in on this kind of little valley we've got here in this oscillator waveform. Then what we can do is use the grain LFO. Now, similar to an analog LFO, this is going to oscillate the position. Let me show you what I mean. The larger the value you set, the wider the range it will oscillate through. And this is our speed. That's quite big. I'm going to reduce the range. So you see now we're getting a very analog kind of behaviour out of this now. Yes, we've got an analog wave in there. You can slow it right down again. That's really nice. The other thing we can do is introduce some jitter at the position, at the playhead, if you like. So if I slow that right down again, for some reason it's still moving. There we go, we've got it completely still again. So we've got a jitter control. So if I increase this, you'll start to see the movement, but you can hear it much lower. Yes, it gives you a tiny bit of movement. Increase the LFO back again. Now, other ways we can add movement is using our FEG here. So if we go into the synth section, you'll see the more traditional controls. We've got our amp and filter and LFO. So the filter's got its envelope here. So if I was to set up this with a kind of slow, swooping attack, and then quite a long decay, and then put the sustain somewhere in the middle, then this is gonna be something quite audible when I come back here and dial this in. So you can see attack, decay, sustain, release. So in this way you get a modulation movement that happens with every key press. Like a synthesizer would. Okay, that's just that's the three main ways of introducing movement to the position. You also have these minimum and maximum controls, which enable you just to set the kind of canvas within which these movements will work. So if I was to zero that right down and go back to my LFO, now I could increase that quite a lot, and it would be constrained by these by the minimum and maximum, which can be quite useful if you don't want the playhead to wrap around the end. Except, for example, if you're using scan, let me show you. If you're using scan, when it plays through and reaches the end, it will wrap round to the beginning. You see what I mean? Now, if you don't want that to happen, you can just set the maximum here and a minimum here. And it will wrap to the minimum. So you can just define the area it's going to operate within. The other end of tone generation with Granular would be, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of metallic, choppy side of things, which is great to contrast with these fluffier, sustained cloud-like textures. So what we would do for that is to reduce our length a little bit. Maybe the envelope. There's something that's quite a clear gating effect. Now again, the same modulation and movement parameters apply. So what's really nice when you've got something quite choppy and gated is just to scan through an evolving waveform like this. So you can hear the interesting effect that gives immediately. You can do it much faster or backwards. You can, of course, combine these different effects. So you might be scanning through, but you'd also add some jitter. Or you can scan and add your FEG. As you see, it comes forward, kind of comes back on itself with the envelope. A lot of interesting stuff you can do. With the LFO, things can get quite kind of out of control with that kind of thing. You can slow down the LFO. So we've got this kind of back and forth that will also scan along. So now it's wrapped around to the front and back. So that's not ideal. You would increase the minimum max. Okay. The final part of the grain control panel that I haven't mentioned is the randomize section. You can randomize pitch. It's quite interesting. And what's nice is that you can quantize this to modes. Now, this gives you a kind of arpeggiator. So if you can randomize the pan. And the velocity, if you have some velocity assigned. So if I really increase the amplifier velocity, you will hear the randomization much more. So don't fall into the trap of thinking it's not doing anything if you've not assigned any velocity. Okay, as I say, that's covered the grain setup. Now, what you do with Polarity is, of course, you kind of do all this twice, or you've got another oscillator, another grain engine to work with, and that's what makes Polarity interesting and unique Most granular things out there are kind of one stream, or they combine a sort of traditional sampled layer with granular. You can really get some chaos and some interesting effects going with two. So if we say that we've got this choppy thing on our top layer, you might want to do a cloud-like thing on the bottom layer. But actually that's what I did in the previous tutorial. So what I'm going to do now, having done a quick overview of the engine, is I'm going to show you how I like to set up kind of machines that are kind of content agnostic, if you like. Set up a machine into which you can randomize many different types of sample and get interesting results. So I'm going to abandon the work I've done so far in this tutorial and start again from scratch.